Hi, I'm Leah Courtney. I'm a homeschool mom and business owner at As We Walk Along the Road. Have you ever struggled with how you're going to handle high school science in your homeschool? I have. In our state, students are required to have 3 lab classes as part of their graduation requirements. And I know from firsthand experience that it is really hard sometimes to create a lab class in your homeschool. If you're going to do science labs, there are often lots of supplies that you're going to have to buy, and it's expensive if you're going to do that for just one child who's taking one class. So one of the things that I've tried to do in the past is to kind of group my kids together, and then I'll order one big science lab kit and try to let both of them do it. But even that is really difficult. We end up with lots of material that we don't really use. It's quite expensive to pay for a big kit like that. And we're limited by my knowledge and understanding of how to do the lab, because if I'm not doing it correctly, then our results are not going to be accurate and the kids are going to struggle with having to write a lab report. And the lab reports are a whole nother thing. I did not have a very rigorous science education in my high school years, and as a result, I'm not familiar with some of the different parts of science labs, such as creating a good lab report. But I know from my daughter, who is now in college, that it's important that kids know how to create a lab report. Even if they're not going into a science field in college, they're going to be required to take some type of science. And if they don't know how to write a lab report, they're going to really struggle. So, all that to say that teaching science labs in high school has been a struggle for me with my own kids. I've been super excited, though, to have the opportunity to review a virtual physics lab from College Prep Science. I've talked about College Prep Science and their resources before. They offer quite a few live or self-paced science classes, as well as ACT bootcamp class, which I reviewed recently. But I'm really excited about these virtual labs. You can have your student take a virtual physics lab, a virtual chemistry lab, or a virtual biology lab. And in these virtual labs, kids actually get the opportunity to carry out procedures that they would carry out as if they were in a real lab class. They also learn how to write a lab report, and they get the opportunity to practice this with a number of different labs in that category. So I'm really excited about this and wanted to share it with you. I'm going to take you along and let you have a peek inside the virtual physics lab, which is the lab that I received for free to review. So here is a look at the virtual physics lab from College Prep Science. Your virtual labs will be housed inside of Canvas. Canvas is an online program that lots of different schools, both physical and online, use for student information and assignments. It's pretty easy to use, but even if you're not familiar with it, there are lots of good instructions and information to get you started. So when you first log in, you will be able to go to your physics lab homepage. And this is what the homepage looks like. So there's information here about using Canvas and how this program works. Then there is an example lab report. And this is great for students, especially if they have not had opportunity to write out lab reports in the past. Lab reports are going to be important when they go to college because for any kind of science class that they're required to take, they will usually be required to write out lab reports. So this is a great sample lab report. It shows all of the parts that should be included in a lab report, and just as a guide to help students know how they're going to write these. And they will be required to write a lab report for every experiment that they do. So you can also download this lab report so students can use it as an example. And in the introductory video, students will be walked through how to write this lab report. So there is an introduction video when students first get started. And in this introduction video, students will be introduced to how the virtual lab works. They'll be introduced to the scientific method and to how to write a lab report. So this is an especially important video to watch as they are getting started. Now, when they're actually ready to start the labs, there are 11 labs in this class. When you purchase a virtual lab, you will have access to that lab for 12 months. And you can have students do these labs at their own pace. So this is a self-paced class. So you'll have access to these 11 labs for the whole year. And students, when they get ready to do a lab, they will watch a video first. The video is going to tell them exactly what they're going to cover in this lab. So it's important to watch the video first to get started. The videos are taught by Greg Landry. He is a veteran homeschool dad and college science teacher. College prep science classes are taught from a biblical viewpoint as well. So if that's important to you in a science class, all of their classes are taught from a biblical viewpoint. After students watch the video that explains what they're doing in the lab, then they can go into the actual lab, and you'll do that with this tab, Access Your Virtual Physics Lab. The first time that you go in to access it, you'll use the username and password that's given right there on your home page, and you'll be able to log into that virtual lab. So here's a look at what the virtual lab looks like. This is physics lab. And when students come into the lab to start with, everything is dark because nobody's in the lab, so they're going to flip on the light switch. There are music and sound effects that you can choose to have or not have, to turn up or turn down. I like to use the sound effects. I think it's pretty cool because you can actually hear what you're doing. But you can choose to have those up or down depending on what your student is familiar with. Students are then going to choose the lab that they're doing. And then there are very detailed instructions that students are going to go through as they complete this lab. There's a reminder at the top that it's important to watch the video for the lab before beginning the experiment. And then there are going to be detailed instructions that tell the student exactly what to do as they walk through this lab. Just as an example, I will show you the first couple of instructions here and let you have a look at how this works. So for number 1, we are supposed to go to the basic container drawer and move the beaker to the sink. So students will click on basic containers, then they will click on beaker and drag the beaker to the sink area. Then number 2 says that they are supposed to dispense a volume of water. Now, that means they can choose the volume of water to put into their container. You have a hot water faucet and you have a cold water faucet. And when you hover over those, you will see that right there on the screen, it tells you that when you click this, it's going to dispense 10 milliliters of cold water per click into the container, or 10 milliliters of hot water per click into the container. So I'm going to use cold water, and I'm going to click 3 times to have 30 milliliters. 1, 2, 3. Now, I should have 30 milliliters of water. And number 3 tells me to move this beaker to lab area 2, and it's going to show me the volume of water that I have. So I'm dragging to lab area 2, and the reading says 30 milliliters. Then it's easy to empty the contents with this delete looking button, and to move the beaker back to the sink, we're going to drag it. And then the instructions, there we go. Then the instructions are going to tell us what to continue to do. And as I said, there's some really detailed instructions. Students are going to complete all of these. And then the last instruction says to create a lab report for this experiment. As you can see, this virtual lab is going to give students the opportunity to do some of the same things that they would be able to do in a physical lab. The benefit is that you do not have to buy the materials. You do not have to buy anything that they're going to use to experiment with. You don't have to have these resources at home. You don't have to hope that you have the right resources and that you haven't forgotten something. Everything is right here ready for your student to do, and there are detailed instructions to help them do it. So if you are looking for a lab science for your student and you want to make this as easy as possible for your student and yourself, I would encourage you to check out these virtual labs from College Prep Science.